Hello, welcome to Shelby Radio. I am Shelby Carino, and this is episode number 718. And today we're talking about it is not you, it is your light. Isn't that nice? Okay. And why is it that people project onto the light? Or if you even kind of flip the script, what if the light projects onto the dark? I don't know. Lots of things to discuss today. So, welcome back. I cannot believe it. We are at the last Tuesday in October. Like, seriously, my God, next month is Thanksgiving. How is this happening? Halloween is like a few days away. Okay, but anyway, let's get on and stay track. Oh my gosh, I am so woo! Where is the energy? I'm talking about the light and I'm all blah, 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 blah. Can't even get my words together. Okay. I am going to tell you right out of the gate that this is probably one of the hardest spiritual lessons to embody, because when you are a bringer of light, when you are a healer, when you are an awakened soul, you are going to inevitably trigger things in other people that have nothing to do with you. Okay? Absolutely nothing. And everything to do with the light frequency that you are vibrating or carrying, whatever term you want to use. All right? So I want to kind of just begin with the basics here, all right? And let's talk about, why does the light trigger the shadow or trigger the darkness? Well, first of all, light is very revealing, okay? It illuminates. And when you walk into a space, a room, whatever, carrying that clarity or carrying the presence of that illumination and that higher vibration of that light frequency, well, those around you who are maybe unconsciously holding on to a fear or holding on to a different level of their ego or holding on to a level of control they may not even know about. Well, the light feels like it's going to expose that to them. And I'm sure you've been in these situations too, okay, with yourself, all right? So people may not understand this on a conscious level, but I can guarantee you the nervous systems of ourselves, we do know what's going on. Whether you're on the light side, whether you're on the dark side at the moment of the shadow, whatever. Okay, the nervous system is the telltale sign of knowing what is going on. And the goal is to get to a place in your mastery of your energy where the nervous system doesn't have to feel it the way it does, where it's just a strong, presence that you feel with yourself without getting shook up in that nervous system specifically. Okay. So if you know it happens to you, well, then it happens to others outside of you when you walk into a room. Okay. So this is why the energy field of ourselves is so important, because it is the energy field that picks up that vibration, that picks up that light, that picks up whatever it is that suddenly may become a mirror to another person or yourself. And maybe you didn't even know that you were asking for that. Okay. And all of a sudden it just kind of hits you in the face and you're like, oh, wow. Okay. Wasn't ready for that. Okay. Well, maybe they're not ready for that either. So we have been on both sides of this equation. And I always like to remind people that when we are spiritually waking up, we're waking up at different times on different levels. We never just get there. Okay. We're always in motion towards the next level of mastery. And so when we are moving in our levels of mastery, our spiritual ego gets tested because we think, oh, we've mastered, this one level. And then before you know it, the next level comes in and you're like, did I even master anything? Okay. Because you're like, why am I feeling this? Or, why is this showing up again or whatever? But it's showing up at a completely different level. It's showing up in a completely different way. So we're all mirrors to each other. So let me, I want to do a compare and contrast real quick. Okay. So just follow me in my words. So let's do a visual representation. Okay. Just visually see that on the left side of you, you see the word light. And then on the right side of you, you see the word shadow. Well, we have been more shadow through the years. Okay? Meaning we all have operated from a more lower dense frequency. Okay? That was like the whole third dimension where we could kind of, lead with our shadow because everybody else was. And it's more dense, it's more egotistical, it's more mental and things of that nature. And that's just kind of how we've all lived our lives up until now, where the universe, the world, is installing these little hits of light codes through us individual human bodies here that is poking at our nervous system, that is poking at our energy field, that is poking at all of this frequency. And then something happens in our world to wake us up. Okay? Meaning you may have some kind of trauma that happens to you, or you have, met someone that brings something out in you that changes you, like a partner in a relationship, and all of a sudden you're waking up. Near-death experiences wake us up. Okay, like there's all these different ways that our shadow side over here on the right gets knocked. Okay, death, losing a family member, a friend, a loved one, an animal, these things shake up our shadow to where we look at that and go, okay, why is all this quote unquote bad stuff happening to me? Right. And so eventually when things knock on that shadow enough, then over here on the left, then you start bringing in a little bit more frequency. You start bringing in a little bit more light. Meaning you're starting to question things, or you reach out to God or your faith, or, whatever, because a lot of times it takes trauma and tragedy to wake us up. Okay. And bring in more of that light. So that's when you really start illuminating, because you're waking your parts up and you're now becoming conscious to what you're waking up. Because now you've probably met a mentor like myself, or you're taking in a lot more information. You're starting to learn about it. You're starting to make decisions about where your life is going. You may be upsetting the apple cart of friends and family around you. You may be switching jobs, you may be switching relationships. You're looking for the holy grail, so to speak. I want purpose in my life. Okay? You're no longer necessarily playing it safe. And I want to actually pause right here and share this story from this movie that I watched a couple weeks ago that had Matthew McConaughey in it. And it's a new release. It's called The Lost Bus. And I didn't know this, but it's actually based on a true story of this massive fire that happened in Paradise, California. What a name, Paradise. Okay. And it is about Matthew McConaughey, who is a bus driver, and he's going through some personal stuff in his life. And all of a sudden, this fire, catches in this town called Paradise. And so it's about him being a bus driver, meeting a teacher and some students that get on his bus, and how they try to navigate through this horrific fire. Okay. I'm not going to give too much away. However, there is a part in the movie where the teacher says, and she's married in a relationship and has a son, and she makes a comment to Matthew McConaughey that if they made it out of this fire, that she would want to travel. She would want to see elephants, and that she's never left Paradise. And so the relationship that she's in, the partner in her relationship had said, you're safe if you don't ever leave Paradise. And so she never left Paradise because she thought, well, if I left, I wouldn't be safe. So she had this belief system. So it wasn't until at some point in this trauma going on in this movie that she makes this realization of, a bigger purpose for herself, to not live small and to live big and to travel and see the world and that, because she's literally in Paradise in the middle of a fire and she's not safe, so it really messed with her belief systems. So it takes things of a certain nature that get us to evaluate where we are in our life, what we're doing in our life, what our relationships are, what our jobs are, and where do we want to spend our time? Because we only have a certain amount of time on earth, okay, before we poof, go elsewhere. All right. And so it's about living in that moment of ourselves. And that's what this spiritual awakening is creating, is that it's creating people to wake up and go, okay, wait a minute, I'm done being a slave from 9 to 5 or, whatever the time clock reads. And, I may or may not get 1 or 2 weeks off a year to go travel and see the world. You know what I mean? So people are just really, 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 really starting to evaluate things because, how horrible for us to live on this planet and then be a slave to the system of work to make money, which is what the system has enslaved us in. And then it's really hard to travel and see the whole rest of the world because you need money, you need this, you need that, right? So this golden age is waking us up to where we're all abundant. Trust me, it's coming. Okay. And as this is happening, that is why it is not you that is moving people maybe sometimes in an uncomfortable position with themselves. It's your light because you're waking up. Okay. And that light shines out there. And the more you navigate that light, the more accountable you are to that, then the deeper your lessons become. Okay. So this is why the light will trigger the darkness. But keep in mind, if your light is projecting out here, to people, if you have an aspect of your shadow self that needs to heal, your light may be illuminating on someone, but if there's a learning in there for you, it's going to illuminate and project something back for you to see. And it can be a two-way relationship in that frequency exchange with someone, and it's not up to them to know what's going on. It's up to you to know, oh, this is what I'm doing, this is my awareness, and this is what I'm going to do with it. And then how they respond to that frequency coming into the space is up to them. However, they may, when that light of you enters, they may project onto you. They may begin to label you as, oh, she's just too much. Or, oh, she's just a little different. Okay, because they don't know how to put the words to the vibration. They don't know how to put the words to the frequency. Okay, so they look at the person and they go, oh, that's a little too much. That's a little different. Or I don't know if those intentions that she's running are completely pure. They start questioning your intentions, or, they may start talking about you or judging you or just dismissing you altogether. I've talked about this in another episode. And then sometimes they may even come and push back and say, are you okay? I'm really concerned about you, or, whatever. And and I talk about how that's kind of a form of spiritual warfare, but here's the truth. It's not you. It's your light. And they don't know how to not make it about you because they're not at themselves yet. So you become this walking light bulb that they have to see or encounter. And until they're ready to chisel away at something in their own shadow, well, they'll project onto you until it kicks back over to them. But rest assured, if they're projecting onto you, I'm quite sure that you're projecting onto them as well for you to see something about yourself. And that's why I always tell light workers, if you're in a situation and it's uncomfortable and you're in the midst of that projection, whether you're doing the projection or they're doing the projection, because we all project, okay? That is a time for you to go, okay, I'm not going to worry about them and who they are and what they're doing. I want to know what is triggering in me. And you always pull the energy in for yourself so you can look at it and go, what does this mean for me? Because if you draw that energy, and I call it hijacking it, if you hijack that energy, because they're not going to do anything with it, they're not awake yet. So if you hijack that energy for yourself, that's more fuel in your energy field to push through any of your shadow stuff that's trying to move in order for you to have the breakthrough. So you will have the breakthrough first, and then it'll trickle on out. The remnants trickle on out to whoever may be around you, including that one specific person that you feel is doing most of the projecting, okay? But in the end, it probably won't even bother you if they are doing that, because probably guaranteed the relationship changes, okay? Because you change, and so they change. And then you may become more compassionate, or you stand back a little bit, or, you just kind of watch their fall and, whatever's going on, but you have no personal investment in it anymore, because you've shifted through your own shadow parts of whatever they were projecting to you, which was really projecting back to you. Okay. So as Faith, hi Faith, my cat, comes up here. Okay. So let's move into this next topic that I want to talk about with all of this. I like to label this as the mask of someone having good intentions, okay? Because one of the most confusing dynamics that can happen with anybody is when you project something out, that it comes disguised as kindness. Oh, I'm just being nice. I'm just being kind. Okay? So I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and I just want you to silently answer to yourself. Have you ever had someone come up to you, raising my hand before I even ask the question here? Have you ever had someone say to you, I'm just worried about you. I'm just worried about you. So I just wanted to check in. And then when they say that to you, you're like, yeah, they're not really worried about me. There's a lot of judgment in that. Okay? Because it's really, they're making it about themselves, but they're projecting onto you like they're worried about you. So something's going on with them, really, that they're worried about. Because trust me, light workers, when we understand how all this works, we don't worry. We don't go looking for that energy that way, okay? We're just like, oh, someone's having a bad day. Okay, great. They're going to move through it. Like it's a completely different level of awareness. Or here's another question. Or not question, but things that they'll say. Well, I don't agree with what you're doing, but I do mean well in what I'm asking you. It's like, I've had people come up to me, like females do this to me. And I'm like, I literally, my first word out of my mouth inside of myself is, bitch, I don't need you to agree with what I'm doing. Like, that's kind of sometimes where my human goes. Like, I don't need you to agree with what I'm doing. And no, you don't mean well. You're just a nosy busybody, kind of a thing. So that's one way they use that. Or it could be, this has happened to me. I think you should tone it down a little for your own good. Meaning, if you're a little too much for the space, if you're a little too much for them, then the projection is, you need to tone it down, okay, for your own good. And you're looking at it going, it's not for my own good. You're doing that for yourself, okay? So again, it's awareness, all right? It's awareness in the space, in the people, in you, in where you are at your level of light. Because when people make statements like that, we sometimes think, oh, they're being supportive. But if you go beyond the superficial, energetically what they're saying is there's some fear they have in themselves. There may even be some jealousy that they're running, that they're moving through you to unconsciously shut you off. Or it's a way to control the space in a little bit of a softer disguise. You know what I'm saying? So when you get really, really good at reading people, reading the energy because you have cleared yourself enough that you really are a good conduit, okay, to these things, then you realize who these people are that say these things. And eventually you'll get to a place where people don't even say anything to you because they can't get in. Okay, because you've built that immunity up so much. So the light in you exposes where others haven't yet done maybe their own inner work in a specific area of their life. And instead, sometimes of people facing what that is, they project it back at you. And that's why I tell you, use the energy to move you. Because when you use the energy to move you and you're done with that energy, guess what? That energy returns to its original sender or creator. So it'll go back to them. And guess what? They have another opportunity to do something with that energy, to wake themselves up or whatever. But guess what? Because you use the energy, then it can no longer be projected onto you because you have immunity to it because you already used it, from where it came from. Okay? So that's a really good tidbit. Okay? I would follow what I just said. All right. Now, I always say this. Oh my gosh. I have said this so many times to my clients, so many times to tribe members, so many times in my podcast. When I first started my podcast, I always said, it's not personal. It's energy. Okay? So stop taking things personal because it's not you. It's the energy. Now, here's the spiritual maturity piece. Now pay attention, okay? I call this the spiritual maturity piece. You must stop taking things personally because it's energetic. I have repeated this now, 6 times? Something like that. What someone projects is never, ever proof that you're wrong. It's proof that your light is doing what it's supposed to do. It's revealing something. Because this is never about right or wrong, because there is no right or wrong. There is just the next best way of doing something. Okay? So what can you do to not take things personally and start shifting that everything's energetic? Well, easier said than done, but you can start to detach with compassion. Have compassion for what's being projected onto you, but somehow detach from it. Meaning, acknowledge where their pain is, maybe not tell them. Okay, if you're really psychic intuitively inside and you see the pain, okay, just have compassion for where they're at. And then just don't absorb it unless it's meant for you to absorb. Okay? So I've come up, I always say this. It's like anytime I move to a next level, I come and I come up against very religious people, or I come up against people who have an ideology of what psychics are, meaning fortune tellers. Like they think you're just supposed to read their fortune. Okay? And they're ignorant to what psychic really is. So anytime I make a shift, it's so funny. I will just somehow manifest very religious people. And then they will just like peck and project. Do you believe in God? How do you do that? And I'm literally inside of myself, I'm like, fuck, are you kidding me? I am like moving to another level because my little auric field is open and I have a hole in it. I need to go fix it because I'm bringing all this in. It's super annoying. Okay. But I go, well, at least I'm going to the next level. Yay me. Okay. And then I move through the experience. That happens with religious people. And then it happens on Keen. I will use Keen as a testing ground for myself. So I will change my price, or I will change a picture, or I'll change my about me page and how I operate or whatever. Like I'll change something. And then lo and behold, I'll bring in some lower level energy and they'll come in. This happened to me a couple weeks ago. They'll come in, like I had this chat come in one night. I think it was like 9:30 at night. And I had this chat come in, and this girl was, she literally started off with a predictive question. And the question was, is so-and-so, she said the name, is so-and-so going to come over tomorrow and help me take apart my bed? I mean, I'm sitting on the couch with Joe. I'm watching a movie and I'm like, oh, this is going to have a chat coming in. And then I see the question and I'm just like, oh my God. Oh my God. People wake up, and then I'm just like, and then I'm sitting there going, I really should just end the chat because I'm not and never have been an armchair psychic, nor do I like those questions. Okay. And so I start out by saying to this person, I said, well, first of all, that's a predictive question. And I don't answer predictive questions because energy changes all the time and I don't know what the future holds. And I said, second of all, why are you concerned about whether or not he's going to come over and help you take your bed apart tomorrow? So I go into change work, right? I go in, I start asking the questions, are you in a relationship with this person? Okay, yes, you are. Great. Well, why are you asking me if he's going to come over and take your bed apart? If you're in a relationship, haven't you talked about this? So I'm just poking and prodding. And then it's like, because I get to the root of everything. So the root of the problem was, well, no one's ever kept their word to me. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, would you like someone to keep their word? Well, yes. And I'm like, okay, well, right now I feel energy in the heart chakra. I feel like, there's a connection there. I feel like, this person's going to, do what they say what they do kind of a thing. And then the energy coming off of her was more negative, and it was like, well, fingers crossed. And I'm like, okay. And it seemed like a good chat to me, but there was something internally in me that was like, you know what? She came in, she wanted an answer. She didn't come in for me to really do the change work. So what happened? Well, when I go and I check my reviews or whatever, at some point, she gave me 1 stars. And I was just like, yep. And then she's like, well, that was, and I had my price. I literally lowered my price to $3 a minute. I'm usually $10.99 a minute. Okay. So you could tell I was in a dip because I was like, going through my frequency upgrades. And so I was just like, so she gives me this 1 star, totally tanks my ratings. Right. And she's like, well, she didn't say anything that I didn't already know. And in my head, I'm like, well, duh. I'm just validating what you already know. But what the problem is you don't know how to change it. So, hello, that's who I am. I help you change the pattern. Did you read my stuff? Because, people don't read your stuff. But what was funny about it is that I wasn't offended. Whereas before, my ego would have been like, oh my God, I can't believe they gave me 1 star. I need to go on here and defend myself. And what's everybody else going to think? And blah, 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 blah. Like I would have gotten fiery about it. And when that happened to me, I went, oh, well, isn't that nice? And I just moved on through it because I didn't care. I wasn't attached to the projection. Okay. And I detached and I went, oh, well, that is her problem. I did chisel down to it. And okay, oops, maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe I should have just stopped at her question and not move further. Okay, fine. Thank you for my reminder. Not everybody comes in for the change work. They just come in, they want an answer. Okay, fine. Slap my wrist, Shelby. Whatever. It just comes with the territory of doing readings with people. Okay, on a site like that. Unless they're paying me my fee to really do the change work, right? So it's this balance I have to learn. So it's kind of like me working in the school system and then me over here having a spiritual business. Like I have to balance how I'm doing those things. So it's the same thing. When I do private sessions with people, I'm doing change work. They're paying me $250 a session to do change work. Versus if I'm on Keen and, people come in for however long they want to come in and they come in with their agenda, I have to learn how to, navigate with their agenda. Okay. So it's this dance that you just learn, okay? And then when you go to other levels, you get tested. So I've really had to learn how to detach, okay? Acknowledge their pain and instead of absorbing it. Even if they lash out like that person did and gave me 1 star on my Keen rating. But at the end of the day, I'm like, do people even pay attention to that? No. Okay, because they're more interested in the frequency. So funny story, that happened that night. I shit you not even an hour later. It's 10:30, okay? And my phone rings. And Joe and I are sitting there and I'm like, why is my phone ringing at 10:30? Like I had Keen off at that point. And so I thought it was a spam call. So I answered the call and I put it on mute and then somebody was on the other end. They were like, hello, hello. And I was like, but I didn't know the number. So I didn't say anything. So they hung up. Well, then I get a text message and it's someone saying literally, I still have it. It's literally, it says, hi, there are 2 of us interested in having a reading done. Are you available tonight? And this was literally at 10:27 at night. And I'm like, hi, who is this? Have you had a session with me before? So I'm literally like, my curiosity is getting sparked. And then they were like, no. And they tell me their name. It's their first time. And there's 3 of them that are interested. And I'm like, oh, I said, okay, well, how did you find me? Were you referred? And then they wrote back and they said, Google, smiley face. And I went, well, you got to love Google. And they were like, oh yeah, for sure. And then they said, we like your info the best. You seem perfect for what we're looking for. Hopefully you're available tonight. And then I was asking them what they were looking for and, kind of go into all of that. Well, I wasn't going to do a reading at 10:30 at night. And then I was like, how did they get my number? Like they're Googling, where is my number out there somewhere? So I was just like, I was kind of having these questions and I kind of had some reservations, but I didn't. And then I said to Joe, I went, wow, my crown chakra is getting out there. Like I'm in the beginning stages of what I've been saying for years, that I'm going global, even though I'm global. Does that make sense? Like my light is really getting ready to shine so people can find everything that I do without me having to do it the way I've been doing it. Does that make sense? So like my little nanu signals are going out there now. And then that was just confirmation. So I was just like, okay, I'm getting ready. Things are happening. So that's a lot for that one piece that I just said of what you can do if the people are projecting onto you. But anyway, the next thing you can do is, what was it? Stand tall in your integrity. Meaning, I've learned this the hard way where I've had to shrink in order to make other people around me comfortable because I didn't want to disrupt the space. And then I had to learn, no, absolutely not. I never need to shrink my light to make other people comfortable. No, like absolutely not. I'm going to walk in and shine like the light that I am. Now, I don't need to come in freaking trailblazing it and fairing it up like, hello, I'm in the room and I have a lot of light. Okay, like no. I don't have to do that. Okay, I can ground that in my body, but still walk in a room and look and appear normal instead of completely flamboyant that, hello, my light is here. Pay attention to me. You know what I mean? So stand in that integrity. It's really hard to do that sometimes when you're in the transitions. Because when you're leveling up to another level of light, sometimes you feel like you're going backwards and that you have forgotten everything and you're being tested all over again, which you are, but not at the level that you were tested before. Okay. So just remind yourself, stand tall in who you are, in that integrity of yourself, even if that projection is coming at you. Okay. And then this is a huge one for me, and maybe hopefully it will be now for you as well. is to, Joe and I use this word all the time, anchor. Anchor in your spiritual truth. Okay? Always remember that when people are looking at your light and evaluating it, pondering it, that your light doesn't necessarily belong with people who are still in the dark. Okay? You don't give that away necessarily. Okay? So when you go through these activations of yourself and you are anchoring in your spiritual truth and you are moving through more and more and more and more layers of your shadow, you get to a place where your nervous system calms down and you can stand in a space with a bunch of shadows and you can still be the calm in the storm. And I am just now arriving at that level in a whole other way, where I'm realizing, wow, I've done so much change work in my masculine. Wow, I can go up against that masculine energy here, and I'm just like a tree that is barely swaying. And then I'm like, oh, thank God. You know, I have my spouse. I have Joe and the masculine energy that I could run all of this stuff through to build that layer of immunity for myself. Okay? So, yeah. So there's that. Now, let's talk about something called energetic hierarchy. Okay? This is very important. I need to take a breath. Well, I took a breath and Reese starts barking. Okay. Well, this is where it gets real. Okay. In spiritual spaces, there's an energetic hierarchy. And this never means superiority. Okay. It means order. So let me say this again. In spiritual spaces, there is an energetic hierarchy, which has nothing to do with superiority. It has to do with order in the space. Okay? When light walks into the space through an individual person, it's going to expose anything dark in the space. Okay? The truth will always outlast any type of fear that runs in that space. Okay? And anyone in that space who is carrying a higher frequency, they may feel misunderstood in that moment if other people in the space are operating from survival. That's if you're outnumbered in the space of more shadow than light. But if you're in a space where you walk in and your light is of the higher frequency than what's in the room, and you work to create that order in the energy, and other people in the space are already on a path of lightness in the frequency, they're going to follow what you're putting into place. They're going to follow the order of your energy, whether you realize it or not, whether they realize it or not. And if something is more heavier or darker in the room or the space, they're all going to notice it and they're going to get irritated by it. Okay? And that's why you want to be at a level of your Buddha, so to speak, your observer, that you're just watching what everyone's looking at in the space. Okay? Because you can learn a lot without saying anything. Okay? So when you understand there's a hierarchy, then you move to a space where there's more clarity. And this isn't about being above anyone. You're just kind of moving a little further ahead than maybe where they walked so far. Okay? And anybody behind you, beside you, they're going to rise up to meet you where you're at. They have to. Okay? Especially if they're already awake and they carry the light codes. They have to. They will follow. Okay? And if not, then they're going to rebel or push against you until they get beat down enough, and then they're ready. And then they fall into line. They fall into that order. So that's why I've told Joe in many situations that I've been in, whether we go to the movie, whether it's something, at work or something in a restaurant or whatever, like I can tell when I walk into a space, if I have a lot of other light people in there, that are a little bit more awake and aware, I don't have to work as hard, right? I don't feel it as much. But if I walk into a space and I'm like, oh my God, this is so dense, there's one of me, and then there's a lot of shadow over here going on, it's a little overwhelming. Okay? And so that's why I'm at how fast can people wake up? And they are waking up. But my passion and my mission is for people to not play in the energy of, oh, this energy feels good over here. This feels good over here. No, it's to take the energy and utilize it to shift your vibrational frequency, your personal shadow self. Not, oh, I do Reiki all the time and it feels good. Like, no. Or I do sound healing. Okay, great. But what are you doing to shift it personally inside of you? That's where the core truth of you is inside. Okay? Not just, let me just have nice frequency around me so I can feel good. No. Are you going down inside and chiseling and excavating that energy out of you so you can see your shadows? And that's what my curriculum does. My curriculum front loads you with the frequencies that you need to safeguard your energetic immune system. So then when these things, and it is when your spiritual self begins tapping away itself to destroy itself, to rebuild itself, then you have more positive frequencies installed that when you rebuild, you follow the order, okay, of those frequencies. That's what my curriculum helps you do. It puts you into the order of it, okay, as you're destroying everything around you and in you, okay? So you have that foundation to step up on, all right? So my mentor always said, she always, and still does, says, you always want someone who's ahead of you, someone who is beside you, and someone who is behind you. Because you have to have someone to follow, okay, and move towards. And then you want someone next to you who is in the same boat as you that you can, have communication with. And then you want someone behind you who's looking at you, at what you're doing, who you can help, when you shed that energy after you've used it, it goes to them and they use it and then they continue to move on. And this is all that power of duplication. Okay. So to finish things up, you want to stand tall in these situations. Okay. When projections come at you, and they will, try never to fold into that projection. Okay. Try to never dim who you are and say to yourself, okay, it's not me, it's my light. However, do know maybe there is a little part of you in there in the shadow that is creating the mirror for you to see something in you to make your light even brighter. There's all different perspectives, okay? Regardless, stand tall. Keep walking. And let your light keep doing what it came here to do. Because the world never needs you to shrink. It needs you to shine. And that is your job. All right? Whew, I'm going to bow that through. That was a big one. Enjoy the rest of the week as we are moving into Halloween. Okay? And I will be back next week, same time, same place. And just remember, none of this is personal. It's all energetic. Keep on shining your light. Keep on chiseling your shadow so more light will shine through you. All right? Take care.